Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us again to our next part of our university summer event. It's great to have you back. Just as a little reminder, my name is Jess and I'm joined today by my colleagues Helen and Gabby, and we're all part of the study hire team who have been working on this project for young carers, so it's great to see you here again. We're also joined this afternoon by two very special guests. We have Sarah and Poppy who are delivering some fantastic taster sessions for us this afternoon. So thank you, Sarah and Poppy. We're really, really grateful that you could spend your afternoon with us today. Just a quick recap of who Study Hire is. We are a partnership with different universities and colleges from across Swindon, Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire and Berkshire. And our job is to work with secondary school students to help you make informed choices about your future. So part of that is putting on different events and activities like this one to help you make those decisions and consider what you might want to do in the future. So we're using Zoom today, so please feel free to put any comments or any questions you might have in the chat box, and at some points we'll also be using polls as well, so please do get involved with those. But anything, your mics and your videos will be turned off, so if you do need to touch base with us or get in touch with us, please just pop that in the chat box. So coming up this afternoon, as I said, we have Sarah and Poppy joining us today for two taster sessions this afternoon on two different topics, but ones that we hope you really enjoy. And then later on this afternoon, Grace, our student ambassador, will be back and we'll be talking about support available at university as well. And then later on in the evening, we have our virtual theatre night, which I'll touch on a little bit later as well. Brilliant. So I'm handing over to Sarah first. Thank you so much, Sarah.
No worries. If you could let me have a go at sharing my screen, which has worked perfectly till now. So fingers crossed. I guess that one there. Let's have a look. Maybe that one. Share. There we go. Bear with me 1 second. I just get it going from beginning. And is that showing full screen? No.
Not yet.
Oh, it just takes a time. I think we've got there, right? Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Jess, for that introduction and for inviting me along. It's a real pleasure, actually, to come along and present today to give you a taster. I think that's a very good point, you know, on what business might be like as a study area. And obviously, I know you're sort of coming in and starting to get into the point where you're considering what might be your future career paths and options. So yeah, today I've introduced myself. I'm Sarah Hill. I'm actually the course leader for the marketing based within the business school. And I'll give you some insight into that. What I'd like to sort of cover on today really is, you know, let's have a look at how the world of work is changing. And really, we're very focused at considering employability, you know, what might be the impact of these going forward, thinking about your job roles and, you know, what might be a good career path to go, and how the world is changing actually on a sixpence at the moment. It seems that with COVID and everything going on and technology. So I'm going to give you a little taste of that. I'll give you some insight into, you know, the sort of things we do at the business school and how, you know, how might a university sort of scheduled timing run. Obviously, it will be based on mine, but you know, you can have a look at different universities and how they deliver. And give you a bit of content really today, something that, you know, is interesting across all of the disciplines that might be applicable for business. So that's kind of where I'd like to go this afternoon with you. So what we're looking at here is we are in what's called a period of exponential change. And you are the generation coming up now that will be benefiting from this change and also need to understand what the changes are happening. And you know, whenever you're in business and it's something that you know, something to think about, if it's a career you might want to consider, you really do have to be on the front foot of all the changes that are happening. You know, we see artificial intelligence, machine learning. How is that scoping? What is happening right now? How might that change the world that you come out into when you want to go into employment going forward? Yes, you know, the business environment. So this is kind of like the wider things that are going on in the environment. And, you know, very much looking at what might be going on, where might the jobs be? Because, you know, obviously, hopefully today we're giving you a taste of what coming to university might be like and what you might want from university. And of course, it is to boost your employability skills. And that's something that, you know, you need key within that. So yeah, the areas that are growing, health, science and tech, communication. So interestingly, where marketing comes in there. But some areas are seeing a contraction, and this is the impact that we're seeing from the new technologies out there. AI, artificial intelligence. So yeah, machines are going to start to do some of the jobs that we have in the past done. And that's quite interesting, because actually they will take what I will call the process jobs, things that, needed someone to do it, but now that can be done by a machine. So what we want to do is to make sure, and what university will help do, is to develop the higher level skills, is what we call them, the skills that the machine can't do. What can a university education give you to help you be ready and enabled to be going into the market there. So yeah, I put all those up, but I think we only have to watch some of the news items and things going on the telly, but what is going on with robotics, and cars are going to drive themselves before long, and there's lots of different changes out there, different technologies, the Internet of Things. You'll just walk into your house and you'll tell it to switch on the lights, tell the fridge to order the food. We are in such exponential change, a very exciting time to coming in and thinking, right, well, I want to make sure I'm ready to be the best I can be going into that working environment. I popped this one up here because actually, interestingly enough, what are the skills that we need to get? So if the jobs are changing and things are happening, what are the critical skills that are going to be wanted by employers? And I think that's really key, and it's an interesting one, because they have to be things that a machine can't do. You've got to be able to think outside of boxes. You've got to be, solve problems, come up with solutions. They're not just running data to find the figures. We need to interpret figures and think critically. Creativity, that's I know you're going to have a lovely session from the second one this afternoon. We still have those abilities as humans. We need to keep that going. And also, working in groups, getting along, brainstorming, coming up with different ideas, working with people and running teams. Those are all going to be great skills that were required. And I put the next two up, interestingly enough. Coordinating with others and emotional intelligence are actually something that young carers already have. You're going to be bringing to the workforce, not the workforce later on, but obviously you don't want to get there before you've gone that step. But because of some of the things you're doing, you definitely need to have some of these things already. You probably already can show how you've done these, which is great. Coordinating with others, making sure your time management. I think you had a little chat yesterday with the representative. Time management is going to be critical, and getting that right for you. And something that we've called emotional intelligence, and that's having empathy, understanding, picking up on humans, their signals, and making sure you sort of have a concern for others' emotions and those things, which again is something that you probably you've already got, and some great skills there that come from your job. So I think that little section is really interesting to think, well, okay, maybe university might be something that would really progress myself and move me up to think about where I'd like to go with a future career. And some of those skills required there, you've already got them and can demonstrate them. So yeah, that's a real positive for yourselves. Yeah, it's really good. Okay, so yeah, we actually within Bucks, and up at the business school up there, we have quite a sort of an ethos that the only constant in business is it's going to change. What was the right plan? What was the right thing to think about? What was the right strategy? That's all going to change. And so we've got to have this flexibility. We've got to, and that's what university is like. It's slightly different than school. When you come out into university, it'll be a lot more open debate and discussions and working in team and coming up with group projects and presenting back to the class. So yeah, really helping you develop all these important skills that were required going out into the workforce. So yeah, we to be in business, you have to be ready for change. Okay, so what I'd like to do, that was just sort of an introduction there, is to sort of say, right, well, let's have a look, what might a lecture be like if you come on to a business course? At Bucks, we have quite a breadth of different degrees within the business school, as well as the whole of the university as well, you know, and these are going to be interesting considerations for you to think about. I can't actually see there, just has anybody already, are they on the call? Have they got any thoughts already where their courses might be going? Anyone want to type it in the chat? Just let me know if they type it in. You know, what courses you might be thinking of. Is anyone on there? I can't actually see.
No comments in the chat yet, but I'll pop that question in there, Sarah.
All right, pop it in the chat. That'd be lovely. Yeah, just for out of interest, really, to see which courses you might be going for. Okie dokie. So yeah, you know, a wide variety of degree disciplines within there. I myself run marketing, and another new degree actually that came on last year, which is again very popular, which is marketing with media communications. And I think you can understand, again, in this ever-changing dynamic world, why media communications is a growth area and something that you know, if you want to run your own business or want to go and work for different companies. Then we'll go into business management degrees, human resource management degrees, as well as sort of accounting and financing, business and finance. So within the business school, we call it the business school, but it's every sort of discipline really that would sort of relate to someone who's thinking of a career in industry, excuse me, and also potentially maybe running your own company, which again has flexibility. And we do have some students that, you know, they come and they're already got their own setups and their own businesses and doing quite well really. So yeah, you know, lots of different opportunities there. And I think that's, you know, good thing about this is that there's no confines, there's so many opportunities, and it's just exploring yourselves to find what you think might the best opportunity for you be, really.
So we've someone's put in the chat, Sarah, business administration they're thinking about.
Business administration.
Business and administration, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's it. I mean, that probably would be, I mean, and different courses have got different names. So yeah, business and business management, and sort of the running of those. Oh, brilliant, right, good, thank you for that. It's nice to those considering that one. Alrighty, so let's have a look as like a bit of a taster, as I think that was my sort of remit today, to try and give you a bit of a taster. What might we need to be thinking about within business? Do you have a thirst for business there? You know, I think it's something that you just have to really want to, and probably already are doing. You love to engage in what's going on around you. You're listening to the news. You know, what might that mean? It's sort of always considering how things can impact on the way you do business. So that's a key one there. And what I put here is what I'm going to give you a little taster on today is something called the external environment. You know, with lectures at university, you have some content. It will have academic underpinning, but within business, it's always applied. We always will say, right, no, here is a potential sort of academic concept or something to be thinking of. And then, you know, well, how does that mean? What does that mean in reality? So when I'm taken today, because it crosses across all of the degree disciplines really, is something called the external environment. And what it appreciates is that we can't, you know, within business, within management, within administration of businesses, running your own business, whatever it might be, you can't just live in a silver, you know, your own little bubble. You have to be aware of everything that's impacting around you. I put some visuals up there. The very scary one there with COVID. You know, what's that doing to business? You know, how's that impacting? Obviously, political issues. How is the consumer changing? You know, and their attitudes changing. So I'm going to touch on a few of these. And you know, Greta Thunberg there, you know, very much quite a strong statement there. You know, that the leaders are children. We need to be the leaders. And I think that I like that as a statement, because it just shows that, yeah, you know, the going forward, the future will be in the hands of the next generation. So yeah, to start this session then, just to, you know, so we'd introduce it for a lecture. I'd pop this up. This is something that basically groups together. So this would be the academic element of it, just to give you some insight. You know, what are all the things that can impact on the way a company does business? It's called PESTEL, PESTEL analysis. So it's anyone you know, might come across that one, but it groups things by, right, so we need to be aware in our environment, what is going to, and what might the impact be for us as a company, you know, as a business, trying to run my own company. And so it's a key underlying sort of academic concept, if you like, within the business studies and business school and things like that. So I'm going to give you a little example. When we have a model, we always, I think at university, you always try and apply it. It's not just enough to have, learning from a book. It's like, well, yeah, let's think about it. How might that be important? So I've got a sample of, or an example from each of those pastel issues, I'll call them now. So the political legal one I've taken here is, this ban now on advertising for what are called HFSS, high in fats, salt and sugar. And that's on the London Underground, the Transport for London. So, all of a sudden you're maybe Red Bull and you want to promote your product. You can't do it on the Underground, which actually, all right, not so much as people haven't been traveling into work, but, that's a real key potential one there. So all of a sudden something, from a government advice, a legal political issue has come in and affected you. And I don't know anyone listening to the news yesterday, they're now going to actually sort of bring in further controls. So the government's always there. So we'll need to think about what the government implications are, how they might impact on the way we do things. So yeah, the political legal issue there is one of our key concerns in our pastel. Economic, what's happening there? Have you seen the visual that's showing the British flag and the European flag? So yeah, we're all concerned with what's happening on there. And actually, something that we're seeing here is that coming out of obviously the last year we've just had, 2020, it was quite a disastrous situation. We saw what's called the economy growing. It's called gross domestic product. So, you'll always get some terms explained. You'll get to understand those terms. It contracted nearly 10%. So that literally means, no growth in the economy and obviously quite a downturn. And, what the implications of that would be in terms of the consumer not spending. Then we haven't got all the money that we need in the economy to spend on services and things like that. So we had quite a bad 2020, the worst in almost 300 years. But the forecasts going forward are looking very positive. We're looking that we're rising in a growth in 2021. I don't know if you've all been out. Now we're allowed out to go shopping and to start to buy again. There's suddenly a boom coming into the economy. So that's interesting to keep an eye on these economic factors. And the UK apparently is going to be outpacing some other advanced economies. So we're looking to be entering a growth. So yeah, we'll talk about these sorts of things through lectures. Keep an eye on any news items coming up. But there's the big question mark there. That's why I put that visual. What might be the implications of leaving the European Union? It's a political decision in a way, but what might that do to the economy? So they're not in little isolated boxes very often, some of the considerations and the factors that we think about. We do need to think what might be the impact on that. Maybe, is it a good time to invest in growing my company? All these sorts of thoughts we might bring in. So economic, so political and economic. The biggest one I think that's key, and certainly within my subject area and discipline, is looking at what's happening, social and cultural changes. What is happening to the world of work? I think today is a testament, aren't it? We're online, we're all spread out in different parts of the country, but we can come together and we can work like that. Will that carry on? Will people now have this more flexible learning, working from home environment? That'll be interesting to see. So yeah, we need to be aware of those, and certainly for human resources and human resource management, which is a degree we offer. How might that impact? What might be the new leadership styles? How are we going to keep talking to our employees and things? So that would be one cultural change, which is quite interesting. A big growth trend at the moment, and I don't know, feel free to type in the chat, is the growth in vegan and vegetarian food consumption, and this flexitarian, the idea that actually, even though I do eat meat, I really should eat less meat. Concern for those sorts of things. Anyone there feel quite strongly about those sorts of things? If you do type any comments in the chat, and I'm sure Jess will let me know if there are any. But they're all key, aren't they? We as certainly for a marketeer, we've probably never heard of Beyond Meat burgers, and now their growth projection is astronomical as a company. They're having fantastic growth, because they did tap into seeing what was a good trend. They kept the eye on the environment and the food and the changing food consumption habits, I thought, right, yeah, let's go into that. Let's get into that area. You know, and LinkedIn also a little bit to people realizing they've got to be healthier, got to have healthier lifestyles. And, you know, in some developed companies, we're seeing raising obesity rates. So, you know, we're looking at all of these sorts of things. And I think social, cultural changes are the most interesting because, you know, if we don't keep aware of them, we potentially could see our business disappearing. You know, we can't sit in our ivory tower, think, oh, you know, it's all going brilliantly well, and then actually not getting and considering changes in consumption habits. So yeah, very interesting. I mean, you know, if you look at what COVID has actually sort of escalated, like how we now buy our food online, you know, delivery of food, changing high street, you know, that could be a whole lecture in its own right. You know, we're seeing some massive brands, and like, I mean, Topshop is one, but you know, lots of brands are suffering. Gap just the other day, you know, so we've all got to be aware of changing habits, changing consumer habits, to make sure that we, you know, keep ahead of the curve, if you like, where we go forward with our sort of capabilities. So yeah, you know, that will give you a thirst for business. You know, oh yeah, wow, I'd like to be thinking about that, and coming up with some new potential areas that, oh yeah, that's a good area to go into. I put up this one because we, you know, we need to know our consumers. That's another really important, probably one of the key things, certainly for the business and marketing degrees and those sorts of things. You know, what are the interests of the consumers? What are they changing? It's very often called their values and their lifestyles. Generation Z, which I think all you guys would be in, that's sort of from about 1995 up to about 2010 birth year. You know, you are a new generation. You are the Greta Thunberg generation. You're changing. There was always the millennials. You know, they were the sort of a certain generation. And now we're seeing the changing lifestyles of Gen Z, who are very concerned for things like the environment, not overeating, meat consumption. You know, we can't destroy the planet. You know, some of these really key trends there. Anyone again, you know, feel free to type in the chat. Do you have any strong values yourselves? Things that, you know, you think, well, actually we're different than other generations, and that's what we would do. We would say, yeah, you know, we need to understand that, especially if you know, if you want to market to that generation and bring products to that generation. And I think the visual there is a bit of a clue. I mean, how are we going to reach them? You know, normally, okay, I'll put a poster up or I'll put a television ad on. Are you guys going to be watching the telly? Are you going to be watching normal television? Are you going to be watching maybe Love Island? You might be watching Love Island, but apart from Love Island, which is about the only TV program broadcast live these days that tends to get the big audience figures. So we'll be looking at all things like that. Right, we want to come up with a communications plan. Where are we going to reach that generation? And so we will sort of spend some time dividing up the cohorts, thinking about them. You know, there's millennials, you might have heard some of these terms when you're thinking. So you'll understand all those sorts of things, and you know, what are their trends, what are their lifestyles, what do we need to be aware of, so that we, you know, in business provide the products and the services and the approach and the attitudes that they want. And you know, if you look at some of the companies that have been very successful, it's because they understand their customer 100%. Here I've put up some. Based on that picture there, you know, if we are going to reach these guys, it's going to have to be via the phone probably, and it's definitely going to be looking at via social media. And you know, we'd have a lot of discussion probably if this was a proper lecture session, and before next week I say, right, I want you all to keep a social media diary. Between this week and next week, I'd get you to record how long you're on social media, what sites you were on, what were you using it for, you know, and that'd be a really interesting, lively debate when we come back next week. And well, I was on 4 hours or I was on 5 hours, you know, and what were you using it for? And then we compare that with some data that's done by researching, and uni's about researching. It's about finding out information. And this is from a database that we use a lot in the business school called Mintel. And I just realized I'm too much. Yeah, but you can see here how, you know, what has been going on. They've been using it to be entertained, connect. So it's great, some lovely sort of background research and data for you to look at. And I think this one I think is, oh, did I double click there? I think I might have done. I just wanted to put this one up. Guess what's the big growth platform over the lockdown? TikTok. everyone, don't know how to do a poll. I don't know if Jess can do it, but how many of you have got TikTok on your phones? I mean, I have, which is, considering, but that's had a growth, up 18%. So we're starting to see it's certainly in certain generations. So it's all interesting. Where should I go? What social media platform would I use? So those are kind of the things we'd get involved in when we're looking at that. And just to finish off there, remember this was the pastel, so we normally come back and say, what are the important ones? Technological changes. Unfortunately, the pictures they can't quite see because the pictures are over the figures there, but we're looking at substantial growth in the use of voice now, just to order your shopping. Put the Sainsbury's order in, or whatever, and technological is going to again impact on how we as humans live our lives. So very important there. And the final one, the environmental of the pastel. We can't just consume. We do have to now have some responsibility for the environment. And the brands that are succeeding and doing well are digging into that and ensuring that they make that work. And another value for those Gen Z is to be ethical. We can't not consider, maybe not paying a fair wage for the work that we're doing. So we'll look at some ethical issues and the importance of ethics within business. That's a key one, really. There was the concern H&M, a brand hopefully you know all about. They withdrew from using cotton from China because of concerns for human rights, and actually their sales in China went down 23%, and that's a big market for H&M. So some of these business decisions aren't that easy to ethically they're right, but they can impact on your profit. And fair play to these brands who are saying, no, we're not going to deal with anyone, profit at any cost. And we'll look at that as well as moving into not-for-profit organisations as well, which would be your charity sector. So we look at lots of different businesses, lots of different conceptions. But that was just one sort of, if you like, academic concept, but it's never just academic for academic purposes. We'll apply it, we'll think about it, how is it approached, what might be the inferences. So hopefully that's given you a little taster of that. And I just really, I probably have sort of just give you a last little overview there, because I know coming up to my timeline. If you come to university, we do 3 and 4 year degree programs, and most universities will do this, I think. The foundation year is great. You can come in and that's your starter year, which will then take you up into a 3-year degree, and then you can choose your specialism in marketing, or you would normally join with a business feel for it, and then you come up. In different than school, you'd actually have 2 semesters in a year, and you do 4 modules a semester, which are 3 hours a week. So the contact time is 12 hours, which is an interesting consideration when you're looking at your commitments and other things you've got going on within your lives as well. But I would say, as I'm sure I'll be backed up in the second presentation, even though the contact time is lower, you still have to do quite a lot of work away from the classroom environment. It would be things like that, right? For next week, prep this presentation with your, a group, or come up with that media diary for me, and we'll discuss it next week. So there is, probably you need to consider a lot more time away from the set down classroom format. And we're very by uni, so when you go around visiting unis, ask how they deliver the content. At the NU, we are more sort of tutorial style, this idea that we will have engaging conversations and discuss and debate points. So that's something personal. How do you like to, some quite like a big lecture theatre where they just present information. Bucks is probably a bit more sort of two-way dialogue of discussion and debate and things like that. So, and interesting there. So yeah, I think I've said it all there. Degrees are good. We're trying to get get employability, get you those soft skills. They're often called, the ones that you probably already are developing by the very nature of who you are. And yeah, think about different career paths and where you might like to go. And remember, yes, by coming onto uni, you will help develop your soft skills and be ready, hopefully, for future employment. And I've just put this one up because it's always quite nice. We did a live brief for a company, some of my students there, and then actually after that, they all got approached and offered jobs. So yeah, you know, I think it's a nice, powerful message to leave you on there. And yeah, thank you very much for your time coming along today. I don't know if there's any questions. I think I did leave, yeah, a few, well, probably not a minute and a half or whatever, but if anyone's got any questions, please, you know, pop them in the chat, and Jess will let me know. And thank you very much for your time. And I hope that's given you a bit of an insight, a bit of a thirst for business.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was really, really interesting. We had a couple of comments in the chat about social media, bit of a divided opinion. Some people love social media, some people don't spend much time, and somebody said they enjoy reading a lot more than being on social media. So yeah, quite.
Doesn't it just show that the customer, that, you know, no one's the same?
Exactly. And
that's what we need to know about as in business. When it's like, right, there's that sort of customer, we'll do that for that one, and that. Yeah, so yeah, if all those things interest you, it's quite, yeah, it's quite, that's a whole lecture in its own right, social media.
Definitely.
On another day.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was really, really interesting. So yeah, if anybody does have any questions, please do pop them in the chat. But yeah, thank you, Sarah. That was great to see all those other elements that you probably might, when somebody says business, it's probably not the first thing that comes into your head.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's so many different degrees and courses and things you can study within a business function, which is why I think to have a wider view is, you know, everything is different avenues, and yeah, lots of different things to look into, and lots of interesting choices to make. And I know the next presentation will give them a different viewpoint completely on something in a different sector, in a different area. So good luck with all your thoughts and your decisions, and going forward in where you might go with your next steps.
Lovely. Thank you. So sorry, we have just had one comment in the chat. I think somebody's thinking about maybe starting their own business.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I guess a business degree at university would be a really good place to start thinking about.
Yeah, and we do actually. We have quite a lot of young entrepreneurs come into university, and yeah, they're running their own business sometimes alongside doing that. And of course, you know, if you're getting to know about customers, how to contact customers, how to use social media to grow your business, so marketing, yeah, you know, something like marketing degree or marketing and social media, because whatever their business is, they're going to be selling it probably via social media channels. So yeah, a good, interesting thought there, if you're thinking about your own business as well.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Alrighty, I'll stop sharing my screen, and I will say cheerio and head out if that's all right.
Lovely.
And yeah, nice to, and I hope the rest of, I know we've got more sessions this afternoon and tomorrow. I hope it all goes very well. And thanks for joining me this afternoon.
Amazing.
All right,
Thank
then.
you so much. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Lovely. So now we are heading over to Poppy, who is going to be delivering our next taster session, all about textiles, sustainability and technology. So Poppy, thank you for being here, and over to you.
Thanks very much, Jess. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Poppy, as Jess says. I'm the course leader for textile design here at Buckinghamshire New University. Alongside teaching on the textile design course, I also teach across some of the other courses that we have within our fashion and textiles cluster, such as our combined fashion and textile course, our costume design course, as well as our foundation years that we do, which Sarah touched upon a little bit as well, where it gets you in to start getting you to think about this area of design and what might be appropriate for you. So plenty of areas of interest that I have here that might be suitable for any questions that you have at the end. But what we're going to do today is we're going to take a little bit of a different approach to Sarah, and we're going to take a deep dive into sustainability within design, specifically textiles and fashion. It leads on nicely from the end of Sarah's presentation, particularly thinking about the environment and ethical issues that you may have within your own lives, as well as in the design world. So I'm going to share my screen. Sit back and enjoy. There's some really lovely videos in this, lots of nice images for you to take a look at. And at the end, if you've got any questions, I'll come back to the chat and we can take it from there. Okay, so hopefully you should all be able to see this. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, then we will make a start. Just going to move you all out of the way. We'll make a start. Okay, so firstly, why do we need sustainable textiles? The most important thing to have a think about here is that manufacturing any product has an impact on three things: the environment, the people who make it, and the buyer. And the buyer is going to be you, your family, your loved ones. For years, the fashion and textile industry have irresponsibly manufactured their products, the consequences of which are enormous and often devastating. And in this presentation, we're going to look at the impact that non-eco textile production has on the environment, the people who make it, and you, as well as fantastic pioneering designers who are changing the way we look at design. So let's start with the basics. What are sustainable textiles? We probably all know this word. We branded it about quite a lot in lots of different areas of our lives, but it is a specific type of textiles. So a sustainable textile is a fabric that is made in an eco-friendly or responsible way. These can sometimes work in a way to substitute non-sustainable products. Sustainable textiles refer to clothing and other accessories that are designed to use organic and recycled materials. They often use less packaging or recyclable packaging, and they are use more energy efficient manufacturing processes. Reducing the environmental impact throughout the life cycle of a fabric item or using lower impact products can contribute actively to improve this situation. So in general, when we're looking at manufacturing textiles, there are 4 major environmental key factors associated with this. They are water, pollution, the use of non-renewable sources, and energy. So let's have a look at each of these separately here. So water pollution. The textile industry consumes and uses huge amounts of water during its various processing stages. Almost all dyes, specialty chemicals, and finishing chemicals that are applied to fabrics are done so using water baths. In addition to this, most fabric preparation steps, including desizing, scouring, bleaching, and mercerizing, use water systems. So in addition, it's estimated that 17 to 20% of industrial water pollution comes from our textile dyeing and treatment industry. It is known that there are 72 toxic chemicals which have been identified in our water, which are there solely because of textile dyeing. And 30 of those chemicals cannot be removed. Now that's quite an alarming statistic, I think. But it is a really vital thing to understand that a piece of clothing or a piece of textiles that you buy, that you purchase, will have gone through at least one, if not all of these fabric preparation steps to produce it. So using a lot of water to produce the garments you wear, the clothing within your interiors in your house. The next key area is energy use. So the life cycle of a fabric consumes a significant amount of energy, particularly in the form of fossil fuels, and particularly when manufacturing synthetic fabrics. A little side note, synthetic fabrics are man-made fabrics, so there's something that is not coming from a natural source. Something such as wool or cotton or hemp is coming from a natural source. That's called a natural fabric or natural fiber. Synthetic is fibers such as polyester, nylon, Kevlar, things like this. In fact, as part of this lecture series that I run, we do a whole separate lecture, particularly about yarn manufacturing and fiber production, and looking at the difference between synthetic and natural as well. So just a little side note there. So in fact, the textile industry is one of the major consumers of fuel, and often this is via the energy which is required for electric power in the processing, steam, and the transportation of goods. The per capita consumption of textiles is about 20 kilograms a year and increasing day by day. And with that rise comes an increased need for energy and a bigger carbon footprint in order to manufacture the fabrics. Domestic and industrial washing and drying of materials is also a big factor in the overall consumption and use of energy. Another area which is quite bad for the environment here in the textile industry is brightening agents. So optical brightening agents, this is OBAs. These are chemicals which are added to textiles during the bleaching and finishing process. And they use fluorescence to trick your eyes into believing that your fabrics are actually whiter and brighter than they are. These additives are often used to enhance the appearance of color of fabric, causing a whitening effect. And visual brighteners, what they do is they transform invisible UV light into visible blue light, resulting in a whiter textiles. This process is not a necessity in textile production, and often these substances can give rise to allergies and skin disease in certain individuals. Thankfully, work to eradicate the use of these unnecessary chemicals is underway, which is a really fantastic thing that's happening. Another element that is very common to people is dry cleaning. So dry cleaning is often not justified, and it obliges the customer to dry clean their fabrics and garments, even though a normal wash would actually suffice. In the dry cleaning process, CFCs, these are called chlorofluorocarbon solvents, are used, which are very, very hostile to the environment. Essentially, CFCs are non-degradable in the air layers closest to the Earth, resulting in a warmer planet, which we all know is an absolute tragedy. Thankfully, the phasing out of CFCs has been underway since 1997, so we are going down the right path. The other thing I think that's really important to reflect upon here is that often you are advised to dry clean your clothes, and this is particularly when your item might be made of a delicate textile or perhaps is heavily embellished. Although newer washing machines now do have settings to allow for softer cycles, and failing that, the good old hand wash will always do the job as well. So there are ways to start getting around some of these problems yourselves. This leads us nicely onto the next slide, which is what can we do? When it comes to environmental action, it's easy to think that large manufacturers should be responsible for changing the process of textile manufacturing. However, there are effective ways that people individually can have a positive impact on the planet. So we're going to tick through a few of these just to see ways that you at home can start to change the way you use and consume textiles. So one of the most important things is to wear more and waste less. So the next time you buy yourself, you should ask yourself, how many times will I wear this? According to Fashion for Good, who are a publication, by wearing your clothes for an extra 9 months, you can reduce waste and water usage by 20 to 30%. So simply re-wearing your clothes, not going out and buying that new item, but re-wearing your clothes until they really come to the end of their lives can help the environment here. Quick and cool washes are a really excellent way to cut some of your carbon emissions. So washing your clothes with cold water on a quick cycle uses half the energy of washing warm. If you replaced 1 load of your washing with a cold wash each week for a whole year, you can save the carbon equivalent of driving 123 kilometers. So that's a really quick and easy thing that you can do to actually start helping and saving at home. Another really good area to look at is to care for your clothes. So it may sound super obvious, but caring for your clothes throughout their lifetime will keep them lasting longer, and ultimately that will reduce the environmental impact that they have. Something really simple we touched upon a minute ago, hand washing to avoid abrasion to textile, is a really simple way of prolonging the lifespan. And finally, something that I hope we are all doing anyway is recycling. So you should never ever throw an unwanted item of clothing into the bin, no matter how old or threadbare or how unloved. Absolutely all textiles can either be reused or recycled and have a potential second life after you've finished with it. You can explore taking your clothes to the local recycling centre or to local charity shops. There are also plenty of high street shops now which are doing offering the option to take your old clothes in for vouchers to use in store, and then they're using those old clothes to remake and recycle into their new collections. So plenty of ways of recycling your clothes. And if you're not doing any of these yet, that's the #1 thing you should start to do. Don't put them in your general rubbish, go and recycle them. So there are a number of designers and innovators who are also paving the way of eco-textiles. And we're going to have a look at this. This is a very creative way of looking at how we can be more sustainable. I'm not saying that everything we're going to look at today is absolutely practical and going to be seen out on the high street, but these are some really creative, innovative ways of being sustainable. So we're going to start with a really interesting company called Pinatex. Lucy Hughes, who graduated from the University of Sussex, used fish waste to create Pinatex. Pinatex is a compostable alternative to single-use plastic, and it won her the 2019 UK James Dyson Award. This material is made from fish scales and skin. These are waste products that would usually be buried in landfill or incinerated. It's a translucent and flexible material, making it a really great candidate for single-use packaging, such as bags or sandwich wrappers. And more importantly, it will break down in home compost or food waste bins within 4 to 6 weeks. So there's no landfill here with this plastic. It's an alternative plastic. So I'm going to show you a little video now of this process. Sometimes these take a little bit to load, so just bear with me with the videos. Here we go.
as soon as I was old enough, our family would try and get under the water. When you see bits of rubbish in the ocean, or when you see that environment be sort of soiled by waste, it's kind of an eye-opener. It's not just other people in other countries that have this disconnect with the ocean. It struck me that it's us as well. The thing with the ocean is it's very much out of sight, out of mind. It kind of doesn't really have a voice of its own, and people need to be the voice for the ocean. Typically, we design in quite a linear way. So we take things from the earth, we make something with it, and then we dispose of it. So I kind of started with understanding that there were materials used in the wrong places. I didn't want to use virgin natural materials. So I challenged myself with starting with a waste stream. Over 172,000 tonnes of fish waste is produced annually by the UK processing plants alone. So as a resource, it's plentiful and it's ongoing. I then played around with the skins and the scales, and I could see that there was potential locked up in there. So I then went on a quest for an organic binder, and through different experiments found a formula that worked to create a bioplastic. So Pinatex is particularly suited to single-use applications, and this is because it takes between 4 and 6 weeks to decompose in a home compostable environment. So I submitted to the James Dyson Awards because I thought there was a sort of need for this product, and it solved a real-world problem. The life cycle of the product ends when the user then disposes of that product. So this is the true design challenge. An engineer is a problem solver. So for me, a good design is something that bridges the gap between behaviours, business, and our planet.
So a nice little example of how, hold on a minute, let's get out of this. A nice example of how it can be used and how bioplastic can be used for a practical application there. On the opposite side of the spectrum, but using a similar process to create a sustainable material, is a really exciting designer called Alice Potts. Alice is a material researcher and inventor. For the past 8 years, Alice has been working on the development of new sustainable biomaterials for use in the clothing industry. So the opposite of the last example we saw. She's working to create sustainable bioplastics and fibres made from algae and other sustainable materials, including food waste. Bioplastic is a material that looks and feels like plastic, but is made wholly from biological material, such as algae, seaweed, and other natural resources. The bioplastic that Alice makes is made of food that has been thrown away and or discarded. So you can see a little example here, quite different from Lucy's Pinatex example that we just looked at. This is a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, working with embellishment processes to make it into quite a beautiful example instead of being practical. In her more experimental work, Alice also creates garments covered in crystals that have been grown from individuals' sweat and other bodily fluids, which I know sounds a little bit disgusting, but is a really exciting development of how we can actually work with our own bodies to produce something that is very, very beautiful. So this image on the left is actually some point shoes from a ballet dancer, and after they'd finished one of their performances, one of their dancing, Alice kept the shoes and grew these really quite outstandingly beautiful crystals off them, which is quite amazing. And on the right, you can see this is actually one of her designs for use of bioplastic on the sole of a shoe, working with ideas of it being a better tread or having better grip. During COVID, Alice has also been developing her bioplastic into biodegradable sequins. This is something that's really quite missing at the moment from the textile industry, particularly this embellishment side. It's very easy to get hold of sustainable fabrics, and we'll talk about a few in a minute, but it's often hard to get hold of sustainable embellishment items such as sequins or beads or embroidery threads. So this is really exciting. This is very, very new from Alice, only a couple of months old. She's been working on this. So alongside making these little bioplastic sequins, she's also been dyeing them from natural sources, so using flowers, earth, vegetables, plants, and showing the variation from season to season, how you can change the colour of your sequins, but also giving the owner or the buyer perhaps a chance to be able to physically pick your own colour palette, which is something quite new and quite inventive. So we mentioned a minute ago a little bit about materials. So Pinatex is probably one of the oldest and most long-running sustainable material development company. You may have actually even heard of it. It is quite famous now. It's an innovative natural textile fibre made from pineapple leaf fibres. Pinatex is created by felting. Felting is a process where you bond fibres together. Felting together the long fibres from pineapple leaves to create a non-woven substrate, so a non-woven yarn. The pineapple industry globally produces 40,000 tonnes of waste pineapple leaves every year, and usually these are just left to rot or they're burned. Approximately 480 leaves, so that's the waste from only 16 pineapple plants, are needed to create 1 square metre of Pinatex material. The material uses the longleaf fibres, which are separated by the pineapple farmers, for additional income, and the leftover biomass from the process can be used as fertilizer. So this is what we call a circular economy. Everything that's coming out of the ground, if it becomes a waste item, it's going back into the ground to start that process up again. So we've got a short video here from Pinatex, just so you can see the process of creating that material. So a nice little insight there into how Pinatex can be used. And on the next slide here, a couple of examples as well, how it has actually been used in very, very practical products. It's actually all over the market now. You can buy it from high-end fashion designers in stores, but you can also buy the fabric on the roll, by the meter. So if you end up studying textiles, it's actually a material that you can use within your own designs. So it's been developed into a usable alternative to animal leathers. It has that same texture to a leather. It's quite thick, it's quite sturdy, and it can be manipulated to create a variety of products. Pinatex has also been used very recently by the renowned fashion designer Paul Smith on a recent collection of trainers. So it doesn't have to just be for outerwear or bags. It's actually starting to be used on shoes for vegan alternatives, which is really great. Another designer I wanted to touch upon is Christopher Rayburn. You may have heard of him. He's a very high-end streetwear designer. He established his eponymous brand with sustainable and intelligent fashion design for a global audience. The Remade ethos, this is his brand here, has pioneered the reworking of surplus fabrics and garments to create distinctive and functional pieces. Designs are developed at the Rayburn Lab, and they are considered for their impact on the environment. So this might include reworking surplus materials. This might be minimizing the carbon footprint with a local manufacturing, or simply producing smaller batches. The idea is that all waste can be reduced. Seeking the most suitable materials from around the globe and working with responsible manufacturing partners is key to the brand. Recycling pre-existing materials and harnessing green technologies is fundamental to the production process. And there's no video to accompany this one, I'm afraid, but I just wanted to show you a couple of stills from, this is from the 2020 collection that Christopher produced. And I just think it's very exciting to see a sustainable brand using responsible design, reusing, recycling, but creating outcomes and a collection and garments that don't look what you would typically expect from a sustainable brand. I think there's a lot of thought that always goes into sustainable fashion, sustainable textiles being natural fibers and hemp, but it doesn't have to be like that. It can be incredibly innovative, incredibly contemporary, and using sometimes synthetic materials, but by reusing those, we're not wasting them, we're not causing any more detrimental impact to the environment. So a really nice way just to see some of these editorial images that look quite different from other things we've looked at so far. Another really fun and exciting designer, Katie Jones, who I actually studied with. So I always try and use her in my lectures, particularly about sustainability, because she's got some really exciting work and really comes at it from a slightly different, more handmade approach. So she studied at Central St Martin's in London, where she received her MA in fashion knitwear. Katie uses surplus textiles and processes like knitting and crochet to create textiles and playful, colourful clothing. Often she incorporates cast off and recycled materials and further embellishes them with embroidery and hand dyeing. She's absolutely dedicated to reusing and not wasting materials, and sustainable practices are a strong motivator behind her colourful and zany style. So you can see here on the right is an example from one of her recent collections. All of the patchwork elements are offcuts from old garments that she picks up from charity shops. A couple of other examples here. This collection on the left is actually her BA collection that she did from her degree. So just something really nice to see how it's incredibly crazy and colourful. Another completely different view on how to be sustainable, I believe. And there's a lovely picture of Katie herself doing her crocheting. And this is the final brand that we're going to look at here, is called Aurea. So again, slightly different process of being sustainable here. So Aurea are a London-based swimwear brand, and they create futuristic styles from recycled fishing nets. Their website showcases hazy and atmospheric video lookbooks and explores the impact of discarded fishing nets on the environment and impoverished communities in the Philippines. The creative duo work closely alongside Networks, which is a program that takes the abandoned nets, these fishing nets, and recycles them into fabrics, which can then be used as a textile to create new pieces. By preventing these fishing nets being thrown straight back into the sea, Aurea are not only protecting marine life by ensuring that animals don't get tangled and killed, but they are also proving that fashion and sustainability can coexist successfully. So another couple of images here just to show their beautiful editorial shoots. I think, again, this just highlights that even if you are being sustainable, it doesn't have to have that typical branding behind it. It can actually still be incredibly high street looking, very fresh, very smart, very contemporary, very current. And the final little video we're going to look at before we move on to a slightly different area, which I thought would be interesting, just have a look at their process here as well. So a nice way just to end that little section of the presentation. And then what I wanted to just touch upon, because I think it's really nice to see how not only do we talk about these things on our course, but also how our students apply these ideas to their own work. A design course, and if you have any questions about this at the end, we can have a chat about this, but doing a design degree is a lot about self-directed study. It's a lot about developing your own ideas, your own creative practical work, and it's drawing upon those key areas, those trends, those elements of the design industry and the wider field that we show you, and applying those and adding those into your own studio practice. So a few examples of how our students have worked sustainably. Emily Hopkins. So as a textile surface designer, Emily is constantly inspired by the natural world. Her goal is to create work that celebrates the brilliant ways nature and man can come together to produce exciting new materials. She goes beyond biophilic design and often uses or includes living organisms in her work. Sustainability has a huge influence on her practice. Innovations in textiles are vital in creating materials that are ethically produced and have minimal effect on the natural environment. Emily explores this in depth and experiments with bacteria and micro-imagery to fuel her designs. Kombucha leather is her main material, which she grows herself. So this is quite similar to Alice Potts, the designer we looked at earlier. It's a fermented tea. Scooby, which is a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast and other ingredients, are combined. It's then left for a period of time, depending on how much you're growing. Sometimes if she was doing smaller A5 pieces, it may take a week. Towards the end of this project, she was actually growing some A2 size pieces of this, and often that may have taken even a month perhaps. And during this process, the surface layer dries, and it can then be peeled off the surface, and you get this sustainable vegan leather alternative. She then actually experimented with embellishment techniques, laser cutting, beading, printing, to explore this a little bit further. So she created this revolutionary material along with natural dyes and sustainable paper, and looked at them being used for interior applications. Another student, Amy Dance, a completely different approach. So she was actually much more focused on printed textiles. A little bio about her project. So scientists have proven that we are at the start of a mass extinction caused by human activity. Thankfully, wildlife can recover, but not without a change. Amy's project explored the creation of new visuals and sustainable materials to reflect current trends while challenging the viewer's perception of the world. Creating awareness of social issues and capturing the beauty hidden within these is what inspires Amy most as a designer. Responsible design was a major influence on Amy's material and design process choices, as well as the storytelling of the extinct and endangered species by visually capturing the animals within their natural habitat. So all of these were hand-drawn herself by Amy. Some of them were digitalized and created as digital prints, and some of them were created through traditional print processes in our workshops on campus, and working solely on sustainable and natural materials such as recycled leather, Pinatex vegan leather. Amy actually got hold of some of this and was printing onto that, which was really exciting. She produced a vibrant collection of traditionally printed fabrics. Another really exciting student, Polly May Redfern, the project was about the waste product of maize production and harvesting. So demand for maize, corn, in the developing world is estimated to double between 2016 and 2050, which will make it the crop with the greatest production globally by 2025. During harvesting, the easiest and least expensive way to get rid of this waste is through the slash and burn techniques. This is basically burning, setting it on fire. And this releases dioxins, which if exposed in the atmosphere, have harmful effects to health. So by repurposing these waste materials that are generated during the production of maize, Polly engaged in creating new functional and sustainable materials. She used this new material to produce interior products and explored the application of natural dyes to this waste product. So a completely different way of thinking there, quite scientific this project was actually, really interesting research journey that she took herself on, and really pioneered the use of this waste fibre as a material. And Isabel Webb, again, a completely different way of thinking. This was particularly about waste products from carpet manufacturing. So each year, 400,000 tonnes of carpet waste are dumped in UK landfill. Isabel's project, it was called Colour Conversion, aims to reduce this amount. So it asks the important questions of how we interact with and apply colour to the environments we occupy. So Isabel actually worked with a local rug manufacturer and gathered all of their offcuts. These were cut off bits of rug that weren't being used, offcuts and waste yarn. The previously unwanted textiles, these offcuts of rugs or these waste yarns, are a mix of post-consumer and post-industrial waste products, offering an innovative end to the carpet waste problem that we're facing. She then produced a collection of bespoke handcrafted rugs, which were the result of an exploration into repurposing waste materials through an application of colour. So it's a really beautiful interiors project. And we will end there. So thank you so much for listening. And if anybody's got any questions, then I'll come back to you now. But also, if any of you do want to just jot down my email address there, if you have any questions that you want to send over at a later date, then I'm absolutely more than happy for you to do that, if that's a little bit more comfortable for you. So I'm going to stop sharing and come back to you all.
Thank you so much, Poppy. That was so fascinating and really interesting to see like some very unique ways that kind of are happening on a broader scale, and also like what your students have been able to produce as part of that too. That, yeah, thank you for sharing those at the end, because I think that really brings it home, I think, to those who are joining in today, what actually they could do at university and how they might feed into that bigger picture of sustainability. And yeah, and
exactly. I do think often we touch upon all these topics. We do this lecture, just so everybody knows, is part of this sort of mini series of lectures that we do for our first years, a module that we do which is called Creative Technology. So alongside the creative work that we do, we also do this sort of lecture series which gets them thinking about the wider industry. And often it is, like you say, sometimes it's quite hard to position themselves in that industry. It feels like quite a long way off sometimes. So it's very, very nice to see how our students can claw back some of these ideas and embed them in their practical work, and that it is actually quite easy to try your hand at some of these sustainable techniques and manufacture these things from the comfort of your studio. I mean, even some of those work, the first one I showed you was done during lockdown. She was growing those in her bedroom. So, you know, it can be done at home.
Amazing. Thank you. We have had a question in the chat.
Great.
Do you, on the course, do you cover being freelance or self-employed as a designer?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually put quite a lot of focus on employability and professional studies in our degree. In your second and third year with us, we do two modules, one called Professional Studies, one called Professional Practice, which is all about preparing you for the world of work when you leave us. So it's actually really important, of course, when you're with us, that we have a fantastic 3 or 4 years, depending on what course you do, of being mega creative and really experimental and trying loads of great things. But ultimately, when you end and you finish, we don't want you to we don't chuck you out into the world. We want to make sure you're prepared. So there's a series of lectures that are in this, particularly about setting yourself up as a freelance designer. We get lots and lots of guest lecturers coming in who are acting practitioners, designers themselves, to come and talk to you about their process and their journey. We look at applications for internships. We do competition entries, everything getting you ready for the world. And then in your final year, the module actually asks you to do a little bit of a deeper career research journey into your chosen pathway. So you do a presentation about what this might entail, what skills you have, what other skills you might need to get. And then as your tutor, we advise you in the directions you might want to go to start to get that experience. But our course is a full-time course, and our contact hours do vary year to year. Generally, you are seeing somebody for about 2.5 days a week, but you have access to all of our facilities 7 days a week. So you actually are expected, a little bit like Sarah said anyway, even though the contact time is not 5 days a week, you're expected to be in the studio. But what that allows you to do is, if you do want to be doing experience yourself as you're going through your degree, internships, work experience, jobs, there is the opportunity to actually do that alongside.
Brilliant. Yeah, I was going to ask what the contact time was. So yeah, I think that's a key thing about university, whether it's a creative subject or business or whatever you study, you're always kind of expected to do the additional learning yourself, isn't it? But knowing that those resources are there and those facilities are there to help you with that is brilliant.
Yeah,
amazing. Thank you, Poppy.
No problem.
If there's any other questions, please do pop them in the chat. But for now, Thank you so much. That was really,
No
really
problem.
fascinating.
And please feel free, if you want to pass my email address on to anybody, if they want to get in touch, I'm more than happy to do that, speak to them directly.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem. All right, have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Brilliant. Okay, so 2 very, very different taster sessions there, but we hope that you enjoyed them. Thank you for coming along this afternoon. We are just going to take a 15-minute break, so we're back at 4, but after 4 we will have Grace back with us, and Helen as well, and we'll be doing a session all about support at university. So Poppy mentioned there about some of the facilities and things. This will be more about what other support you can get access to if you decide to study at university. So have a little think, maybe go away, get a drink, get a little snack, think about any questions you might want to ask us or Grace, and we'll see you back here in 15 minutes. Lovely.
Okay.
Yeah, can you see those?
Yes, yeah, lovely. Thanks, Helen. Brilliant. Yeah, so we've got a few people joining us now, so that's great. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this last session. Yeah, Helen, over to you.
Okay, lovely. Yes, thank you for joining us this afternoon. So I'm just doing a little bit of a presentation just to sort of perhaps get you to feel what it might be like in those first few weeks of settling into university and some of the support that is available, and just maybe perhaps hopefully allaying some of your fears that you might have about going to university and what is it going to be like. And Grace is with us as well, and I will, as I go along, might ask her to sort of chip in, and then there'll be a chance at the end to also ask some questions if you've got some particular questions that you'd like to address to Grace about, what it's like at university. So off we go. So a lot of students, in the sixth form, these are some of the sort of maybe common concerns that people might have about going to university. So they might have maybe concerns around the sort of academic side of it. Will it be too hard? Will I be the only one who doesn't understand things? Will I manage to sort of step up to degree level? So, there might be all those sort of concerns. If it's a new subject you've not studied before, will I understand it? That sort of thing. And then there might be concerns around the social side. Will I meet people I like? Will I make new friends? Or maybe what will I do in my spare time? Will I just be sat bored at the weekends with nothing to do? So people might have concerns about the social side of university. And then there might be maybe just sort of more general sort of concerns about maybe time management, coping. What if the workload's too much? What if I can't cope? Will I have to manage by myself? What if I want to get home and I can't get home? What if I run out of money? All those sort of worries really that you might have about just sort of general coping with the change. So I'm going to go through those and sort of maybe expand a little bit more on them. And then, well, actually, Grace, before we do that, I'll just quickly ask you a question, if you don't mind. Was there anything else that you think that you had as a concern before you went off to university? Anything else that you were sort of particularly worried about?
I guess I covered a lot. I guess not much more. I feel like for me, it was just about really not knowing what it even looked like, and like just logistic every day.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have a timetable, what do you do with your days? Like
yeah, okay. So it'd be good. We'll sort of touch on that a bit later. It'd be good if you sort of maybe could chip in a little bit then as well. Okay, so we'll sort of head through it a little bit. So on the academic side, I mean, obviously there are maybe exceptions, but generally it's thought that the step up from studying at level 3 or studying A-levels going to university isn't actually as big as the step from GCSE to A-level. So, the sort of step up from GCSE to A-level is actually quite a big leap. Whereas when you go to university, you often find that that first year is sort of maybe roughly a similar sort of level, and especially if you are studying a subject that you might have studied at A level, you might find that you're actually covering things that you've maybe already done before. Because if you think about it, a lot of university degrees will have quite varied, quite open entry requirements. So the students coming onto the degree might have quite varied qualifications, so if you're going to do, say, a psychology degree, some of the people might not have studied psychology before. So that first year is all about maybe getting people to understand basic concepts, understand some of the things within the subject. And also for most degrees, the first year doesn't actually count. That doesn't mean that if you don't pass it, that's okay, because I'm sure the university would be a bit worried and be sort of like saying what's going on. But at the same time, it doesn't always count towards your final result. So it does give you a little bit of time to sort of find your feet, find your place. Can be differences though. If you're going maybe to a science subject, then obviously that might be different. Or if you're going to do something like medicine or veterinary, it might be a bit different. But generally, it's not perhaps such a big step as you perhaps think it might be, going from your A levels up to university. And then those of you that would sort of listen to Sarah and Poppy, we've already sort of touched on this a little bit more, that typically you have like 12 hours. If you're doing something like English or history or those sort of subjects, you typically have about 12 hours of actual taught time. If you're doing engineering or a science or a vocational course, it sort of varies a bit more, but it might be 20 to 32 sort of hours. So you do tend to have a bit more taught time on those courses. And it does mean, though, that you have got some time to sort of, find your feet, do some reading, take advantage of other sort of academic support that might be available and things like that. So you might well find that actually you've got more time than you thought, and rather than less time when you first go to university. But like Sarah and Poppy were sort of saying, that, you do have to be quite disciplined as well and make sure you are doing that independent study. Because if you don't keep on top of that, you might find that when you do have to start doing assignments and exams, that you then do find, okay, right, I've got to put a lot of work in now because you haven't perhaps put in those hours earlier. So although you might only have like 12 hours of actual taught time, you do still want to maybe give yourself 12, 15 hours of reading, doing some maybe group work with some other students, that sort of thing as well, to keep on top of stuff. Also, universities will give you, support. And again, this is something when you're researching universities, you might want to find more out about this, what support have they got. But I know at Bucks, we've got the Learning Development Unit, which is just somewhere you can go along if you're having any sort of issues with writing an essay, or you're not really too sure, how to structure it, and you've got, sort of worries about that. Then it's like more learning support, so you can go along there. I know Bedfordshire University has got something similar. So a lot of universities do have an actual place that you can go and you can actually ask for sort of academic support if you are sort of struggling a little bit. And then also the learning resources area or the library, they often sort of run sessions as well. So typical things like referencing can be quite a big thing that you probably haven't done at all before. And when you go to university, that is a very, very sort of particular thing that if you make a point in an essay, you've got to sort of reference it, where did that come from? Whose study was it? Are you just sort of making something up, or what is the actual reference that you're referring to? And that can be something that you haven't really probably done before that much. So a lot of universities, you can go along to the library or the Learning Resources Centre, and they'll sort of run workshops and things like that on that sort of thing, so that you can get used to it. Or there might be some universities, especially if you have already been maybe flagged up as someone come in from what we call a sort of a target demographic, if you like, for want of a better word, then you might have already been sort of flagged up as someone who perhaps might benefit from a little bit of extra support, and they might actually offer you some study skills modules over the summer. Or if that isn't an option, then you might want to yourself make sure you do some reading over the summer. Most universities will have a reading list that you can get hold of, so you can do a little bit of reading and a little bit of work. So perhaps you're just getting a little bit of ahead of the game perhaps over the summer. ready for when you start university. Anything you wanted to add, Grace, to that you thought was, in that sort of initial academic sort of side of it, or when you first joined? Was there any sort of support that you needed?
Yeah. I was actually really worried before coming to uni about like that jump, because in my head, like making friends was secondary to actually kind of staying on my course.
Yes.
And I think kind of we had the kind of library sessions about referencing and things. I think the biggest thing I found was that like I had a bit of like information overload in first week, but I settled into it quite nicely, and if you do get something wrong, then someone's gonna probably just kind of correct you on it, and it's fine. So I think getting things wrong sort of this first couple of weeks is actually, could actually be quite beneficial to like learning.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they always say, don't they, that you actually learn more when you get something wrong than you do if you get it right. So it often sticks in your head more, doesn't it? If you
Yeah,
get
exactly.
it wrong, you
Yeah.
correct yourself. So a little bit about the social side of it. So, all universities will have something called Freshers Week. So basically, that's a week where all the new people that are coming to university can find out about stuff. And you might, sometimes people might think of Freshers Week as being sort of getting drunk and stealing motorway cones and all that sort of stuff. But it doesn't have to be that. It can just be finding out about what societies are on offer, finding out a bit more about things like the library and what's on offer there as well. So it's really a little bit what you make of it, the Freshers Week, but that is a chance for you to actually go out and meet people and find some clubs and some interests that you might be able to join that will help you to sort of make friends. And most universities will have subsidised societies. Some might even have free memberships. So at Bucks, a lot of the stuff we do is actually free. And that does mean that, it is a really good opportunity for you to actually join some societies, some clubs, go to some events, and it not necessarily cost an awful lot of money. You might be able to get subsidised gym membership and things like that. So, it is a real good opportunity to get out there and meet everyone. And then, Grace mentioned this yesterday, that what you've also got to remember is that everyone really, pretty much 99.9% of everybody is going to be new as well. So they're all wanting to sort of make friends and meet new people. Everyone's in the same boat. So, quite often in those first few weeks, it is actually quite easy to sort of meet people and get to know them. You might want to see if some university, if a university you're interested in, whether they do some sort of buddy scheme. So again, some universities will offer either a mentoring scheme or a buddy scheme where you can actually make contact with people who are on your course before you actually go to university. So you might be able to make contact maybe with second year students and contact them and speak to them. So if you've got any questions about, what the course is like and stuff like that, you can actually start to contact people. And then when you arrive, you already know some people. So that can be worth looking out for. And then I've also put part-time work and volunteering, which might seem a bit odd on the sort of social side, but for a lot of people, the friends that they have are actually people that have met at work. So, if you're quite someone who maybe doesn't like going to the pub and doing lots of sort of socializing and going to parties, you might even want to think about maybe getting a little part-time job or doing some volunteering, and that might be an opportunity to meet people as well. And I know, Grace was talking about being the student ambassador. Things like that are really good because that's a lot of the time that's still on campus, and you can manage it. It's quite flexible. Or a lot of universities will have obviously quite big catering departments in normal times. They might put on a lot of events. So you could do a bit of part-time work to do with that side of things, helping out with events and waitressing and catering and that sort of thing. And so you can have, quite a flexible job that would also be a chance to meet people as well. Grace, I can see you nodding away. Anything that you wanted to add in about that?
Yeah. The part-time work, I think in my college it's catered, so we have sort of like the kitchens, on every single day, at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then sometimes the sort of pre-COVID though, some formal dinners that they put on, and they would kind of ask students just like part-time work for the night or sometimes longer term, and it's great because like it's in college, it's where you live. Make a bit of money on the side, and it's quite nice because you get to interact with the kitchen staff and other people, and
quite a nice way to sort of meet different people.
Yeah.
100%.
Lovely. So this is sort of quite a broad area really, but just thinking a bit more generally about, just coping, really about it all. I'm going to sort of go to the bottom point actually first. I think, that for a lot of students moving away from home for the first time, all those sort of like household tasks, like doing the washing, going to the laundrette, being able to put a light bulb in and, making a dinner and all that sort of stuff, that can be new to them, and it can actually be quite stressful because they've maybe not had to do stuff like that before. And so managing being at university and studying and also having to cope with sort of household tasks and things can be quite a big thing for them. But you really, I would guess that most of you have probably done lots of stuff like that anyway because of your caring role. So, I think you're a real advantage because you probably find that a lot of that sort of like independent living, knowing how to cook a dinner, knowing how to organise yourself, you've probably, a dab hand at, and you've probably been doing that an awful lot anyway. So you might find that people are actually asking you for help and, wanting you to help them. Because you've already got a lot of those skills. So as I sort of touched on before, going back to the top point, you might find that you've actually got more time. So although you do need to put in those hours, so just because you've got 12 hours of study time, it doesn't mean that you can sort of go off and do what you want for the rest of the time. It does mean that you could, if you wanted to, sort of organise things so that you could do, like you say, 30 hours of studying during the day, and then you've got free time in the evening to do what you want and relax. Whereas when you're at school, obviously a lot of the time, you're putting in quite, long hours at school. You might have to travel quite a distance to get to school. And then when you come home, you're then doing homework and doing a lot of sort of studying and revision on top of that. So, in lots of ways, you might find that you have actually got more time when you're at university. But I think it's just important to keep focused, don't drift for too long, keep a timetable, make sure you put in those hours, and then you'll definitely be able to keep on top of everything. There's lots of support available. I'm going to sort of run through in a moment some of the different places that you can get support. But, universities will have what they call a student centre, and that's like a hub where you can find out things like counselling, housing, financial help, all that sort of stuff. And, there is a lot of support available. But what I would say is maybe find out where it is before you actually need it. Quite often they could be tucked away down some little dark corridor that nobody really goes down very much. Or they're not where a lot of the lecture halls are, so you don't go there naturally. So, just find out where some of those the student centre is, and so you know where you need to go if you do find that you need to get some help. On the financial side, universities will have things like hardship funds. So if you do find yourself sort of really struggling for money, again, you can go along to student centre, say, I have got a bit of an issue, I need some sort of short-term funds, and they can sort of get that organised. It's only usually small amounts of money, but it can be enough just to sort of tide you over. And the same with things like extension on assignments. I think a lot of the time it's sort of being a bit proactive. If you think it might be something that might happen, that maybe something has happened at home and you've got to take some time out and go home, and that means you're going to be late on an assignment, maybe talk to your lecturer before that happens. Make sure you find out what the process is. A lot of the time, if you're asking for extensions, you have to do it in a certain time frame, and if you don't, you'll then lose marks. So again, find out what the process is, and then if it does happen and you are struggling to get an assignment done in time, you know who to ask, you know what to do to get it all organised so you can get a little extension on the deadline. I don't know, do you want to add anything in about that, Grace? Because I know you said you had to get a bit of an extension for one of your assignments.
Yeah. I did a piece of coursework, so the first thing that actually contributed to my like actual degree, which was like wow. And I remember I'd had a bit of a rough time in the holiday before that, because that's when we went to do it, like fill it in. My grandfather passed away, and so there are normally some sort of criteria that they give you for sort of the more serious exams that you have to hand in. But I think because of the pandemic, they are being a bit kind of more lenient with kind of exceptions anyway. So yeah, I was just able to kind of like, you know, go through my college office and just apply for it. And I think I had to get a note from the college doctor, but that was about it. And it was processed very quickly, and that kind of put me at ease. Yeah.
I think that sort of raises an important point as well, which I haven't actually sort of got a slide on necessarily, but things like GP support, you know, again, it's always good to register for a doctor as soon as you get to university. Again, don't leave it until you know, something happens and you're feeling ill and you need to see a GP, because then it might take a bit of time to get organised. And you know, and if you do need any other support for other things like counselling and stuff like that, then it might be that you do need a GP to also sort of back that up. So yeah, so I think it's important to sort of register for those things ahead of time. Okay, so I was just going to go through a little bit more about financial sort of support. So so basically, you know, you hear a lot of talk about student tuition fees, and you can get your tuition fee, and that'll get paid directly to the university. So once you've applied, it'll go direct to the university and it'll pay for your tuition fee. But perhaps what people don't talk about quite so much is you can also get a maintenance loan, and the maintenance loan is dependent a bit on your home income, but you can get up to £12,000 a year as a loan if you need it to sort of support yourself. And so that can help with obviously your accommodation and you know, all that other sort of stuff, the actual, you know, living costs of being away at university. So you can get a hold of that if you need it. Just mentioning, I know it might not apply to all of you, but it's worth bearing in mind there's also the disabled student allowance, and the definition of a disability is really just anything that sort of impacts on your life in a reasonable, significant way. So it could be dyslexia or Asperger's or autism, or it could be that you've got maybe a chronic illness like chronic fatigue or something like that. So they can be what we think of as maybe hidden disabilities, so disabilities that perhaps aren't quite so obvious. So it could be like social anxiety, that sort of stuff. It does obviously, you have to have an assessment, so it has to be assessed, and there is a bit of a process involved in that. But if there is something, again, that you're already getting support with, maybe through your GP service or maybe through school, if you're getting some learning support in school for something, then it's definitely worth thinking, you know, might you be entitled to the disabled student allowance? And this can be, if you do get it, absolutely fantastic, because you can get up to £25,000. And I know people who've, you know, maybe got a laptop, or they might have even actually employed someone and worked with someone who had got sight impairment, visual impairment, and they employed someone to actually go to lectures and take down notes and stuff like that. So, you know, it's quite flexible, and it can be quite a good thing to get hold of if it's applicable to you. So do bear that in mind. And then a lot of universities will offer sort of other bursaries and financial support. And usually there's some eligibility criteria. So it might be that you've got to be like the first in your household to go to university. Some universities will have bursaries that are for young carers. So, you know, it's worth keeping an eye out for that and seeing if they have got bursaries for young carers. Or it might be that you sort of fall in a bit more of a general sort of, maybe coming from a family that maybe you're the first of the family to go to university, or you might have other criteria that you can sort of use to get a bursary. But people don't always look into those as much as perhaps they should. They can be a bit hidden on websites. So you might want to just sort of, in the search little function on the university website, just search for sort of bursaries or scholarships and just see if they do offer anything particularly. Or if, when you're doing your UCAS form, you tick to say that you're happy for your information to be shared with student finance, you can sometimes get flagged up for bursaries, and that automatically. So that can be quite a good thing to do as well, because you might just be flagged up automatically for some bursaries if you fall into that. Okay. Anything, Grace, sorry to sort of put you in on the spot a little bit, but how have you found the actual managing the finance of sort of being away from home and having to pay for accommodation and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think it was pretty daunting in the beginning, just kind of like applying student finance and things, and like just thinking, okay, so like you feel kind of rich when you get your first installment. You're
Yeah.
like, actually, I have to pay for rent and like do other things. I think I have a little bit tomorrow about kind of how I budget and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think the basic sort of thing for me was just getting used to having my own money. And the fact that sort of no one was there to tell me what to do with it necessarily. So on the one hand, it was great because it meant that I could like, for example, like people here like might know that I love theatre, and so I can kind of like do that a bit more. But also like how many theatre trips and like kind of the self-discipline it takes, like really balancing those two things. I think sometimes though, the sort of like admin and bureaucracy can be a bit difficult, especially if kind of you're a young carer and you kind of have to take care of things yourself. I know for me, I had a bit of an issue with student finance this year. That was a bit of a headache. Just like a lot of back and forth, a lot of forms to fill out because they said something about me being overpaid, and like there's a lot to get your head around.
Yeah.
So I'd say sort of like if you can keep on top of like paperwork and things like that. I know it sounds very daunting, but normally there'll be some sort of income, some sort of like email that reminds you to do things, so that should be fine. But yeah, keep on top of all of those and making sure that you understand the student finance process, because if not, it can be a bit of a headache to get around, I think.
Yeah, I think also, for those of you that are sort of maybe coming up to applying to university, apply for student finance as early as possible. A lot of people have got perhaps more unusual, well, perhaps not unusual these days, but not your typical family setup, let's say, and that can then make it a bit more complicated. So give yourself plenty of time to sort of get all that information together and everything. Yeah, definitely, because it can be a bit time consuming. So these are just some examples really of what we've got on offer at Buckinghamshire University, and other universities are going to be very similar, so this isn't just sort of exclusive to Bucks, but these are all the different services that you've got there that you could use. You've got like a multi-faith chaplaincy we've got there, so you can go and just get support if that's something that's quite important to you and you just need some support from maybe someone from a faith background. Then you can access that, and they also do help with things like food banks and that as well. As I mentioned before, we've got like the learning development unit where you can get support with academic writing, referencing, all that sort of thing. And then we've got the inclusion, diversity and disability sort of support area, so they can give disability support, things like what we call reasonable adjustment. So if you've got an issue and you feel like you need things around you to be adjusted in order to help you deal with that, they can support you with that and help you to apply for that. So there might be sort of something that's useful for you to sort of know of and be aware of. Then we've got the student opportunities and careers, and a lot of stuff like the student ambassador and part-time work, that'll all be sort of advertised or can sometimes be advertised through them. So it's worth finding out where they are. And then we've got counselling, where you can get help with sort of mental health support, counselling appointments, all that, and it's all obviously confidential. And then we've also got student unions. So you might hear us talking a bit about the student union. The student union is a body to represent students, and so they're a bit independent from the university. So if you've got maybe an issue with a lecturer, you might find that you need a bit of support, getting someone to help you sort that out. And if you go to the university, that might, hopefully in this day and age they would support you with that, but they might be a bit reluctant to. Whereas if you go to the student union, then they're independent and they can give you support with stuff like that. So if you're having any issues with your course, or you're not getting on with the lecturer, in a quite a significant way, obviously, then that's stuff that they can help you with. And they can also offer you just general sort of guidance, advice about maybe, I don't know, drugs issues, legal matters, pretty much anything really. So it's worth bearing in mind where the student union is as well. Okay, so I think that's it from me really. Has anyone got any questions at all about anything of the sort of support you might get when you're at university? any questions coming up in the chat at all?
No questions in the chat yet, Helen, but I've just put a reminder in there. I've just got one for Grace, if that's okay. You mentioned yesterday a little bit about your welfare role that you did as a student ambassador. Would you mind just explaining a little bit about what you did for that role?
Yeah, certainly, of course. So in Oxford, there, because of the collegiate system, so we just have a bunch of colleges instead of kind of one central campus. They have a sort of like different like committees, like they call it junior common room committees, but it's basically just the undergraduate cohort elect people to just kind of represent them within each college. And so within sort of those committees, there are normally a couple of welfare roles. And so I kind of campaigned to be sort of like the welfare representative, one of three in my college. And that just kind of meant that the university kind of would recognize us as the people who would kind of speak for the students on various welfare issues. So we kind of have, I guess our role was kind of threefold. So I did this kind of all of last year, which was when the pandemic was at its height. So it was like, it was a big job, I think, and nothing that we kind of expected. But so we kind of planned kind of like nice events kind of for escapism, or just nice simple things like brunches and maybe like welfare dog walks, things like that. We'd kind of sit on the central welfare committee and kind of advocate for student issues. And then we'd also sort of like talk to people on like a one-on-one basis. So the university paid for us to have sort of peer support training, and we'd be approachable for people to come and talk to us about their issues. And we kind of weren't like trained counselors or anything, but kind of just people who were trained on how to make a safe space for someone to be able to talk about something that they want to talk about. So that's kind of what we did.
Amazing, thank you. That sounds really, really rewarding as well.
Yeah, honestly, like you don't, and I think in the role as well, I could see kind of the diversity of the issues that some of the people are facing, and how, you know, kind of what we did was kind of just direct them to the right support network. So that was really rewarding.
Awesome, thank you, Grace. We have had a few more questions in the chat box. Perhaps Helen, this might be a bit more specific for you to answer, or for us to answer. Someone's asked, is there any information about if someone was to have an education healthcare plan, EHCP?
Yeah, I would say the one thing to do is to make sure you put it on your UCAS form, because I think sometimes people are a bit reluctant to sort of mention that on the UCAS form, but it's always, you know, worth there is a little box where you can tick whether you've got any sort of disability support needs, that sort of stuff, and then straight away they'll already have flagged up that maybe they need to then talk to you a bit more about that. And then when you're at university, then just, if they're not already aware, make sure that people are aware. And if your plan does mean that you have got maybe a significant sort of, you know, requirement, maybe because you've got something like dyslexia that does affect your, you know, your work a bit, and you need some support with that, then definitely think about getting the disabled student allowance, because as I say, that does cover things like dyslexia, and you can get a lot of support with that. I don't know if Jess, you want to sort of add anything else in?
Yeah, I think no matter what is covered on your EHCP, I would definitely recommend talking to either your Senko if you're at school or college, as well as perhaps other people, like if you're with the Young Carers Service, to have a chat about that too as well, because yeah, that disabled students allowance I think would be really beneficial for you to access, whether they do a whole range of things depending on what you might need. So like Helen was saying, like you might be able to get a laptop, or it's just making sure you have extra time for your assessments, or even if it's just making sure the university are aware before you get to university what your needs might be. It means that they can put things in place for you, so you don't have to worry about that when you get there.
Yeah, definitely. And like Jess said, you know, do you know, talk to your special education needs teacher at school, and they will give you support with applying for that. And it just sort of flags up that you might need a bit of extra support. And actually at university, they will do some assessments and things like that. You know, sometimes people go to university not really aware that they've maybe got an issue, and then they might do an assessment and find out that they are actually dyslexic or something like that. So sometimes actually you can maybe get more support at university than you expect with some of these things.
Brilliant, thank you. We've had a few more questions in the chat. I'm just going to scroll through and just see. This is a question for Grace. Is there anything you find difficult about being at uni? Is it worse than you expected? Better? Is it just what you had already had in your mind? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think something that is quite difficult about uni is sometimes, I don't know if this is, I think this might be a more internal thing that I put on myself, but you do kind of feel it as well. Like just the pressure to socialize kind of all the time. I know especially kind of post-pandemic, we all kind of came back, and you know there's some, maybe it might be something, an event going on like every night, or you kind of, people just want to plan stuff. And sometimes if you've had a long week, you just kind of are exhausted. But then the FOMO, the fear of missing out, that's when the FOMO strikes. And I think it's probably just something to do with the fact that you're around people all the time, and you kind of just want to see people, but you also need to kind of listen to yourself, and you know, like if you are tired, then maybe it is bedtime, you know, kind of that, this deciding on how to navigate through that for me was quite difficult. But in terms of like whether it was kind of better or worse than I expected, in some ways it was much better. I was not expecting to sort of make as many friends as I did. I thought it would be harder than it was to find kind of people who just like really understand me. And even academically as well, I was really, really worried about sort of how I do, you know, how much I adjust to this huge workload, or just like more complicated theories, and things like that. But I think it is sort of like, yeah, kind of like Helen said at the beginning of the presentation, the jump isn't as much as I expected, and especially in terms of the difficulty of the actual work. I think it's just about learning how to kind of follow your own nose a bit more, especially with humanities, and just kind of like develop your own thinking a bit more. Yeah, I think it was kind of much better.
Brilliant, thank you, Grace. We've got another question for you, Grace, sorry. This is more to do with your caring role, and it's asking, how does your mum feel about you being away from home and being at uni?
Yeah, well, see, the interesting thing is that my mum was the person who like kind of advocated for uni, and especially Oxford in the first place. So she's really kind of wants me to get my education. I think sometimes it can be a bit difficult because I have to sort of like kind of really prioritize uni work when I'm at uni, and I feel a bit bad for like leaving her and not being there. But I think I know that like deep down she does want me to, you know, focus on my degree and kind of put it first, as hard as that may seem a lot of the time. Yeah, but I think if she does need me, I can always come down, because I don't live too far, so it is a bit of a mixed bag sometimes.
Yeah, and I think, thank you, Grace, I think it's a bit like what you were saying yesterday, finding that balance between, yeah, it can be difficult, but no, lovely, thank you. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to make this our last one. We've just had another one come through, but just to say that Grace will be with us tomorrow as well, virtually, so if you are joining the on-campus day, you will see Grace tomorrow, and we'll have an opportunity to ask plenty more questions. But this one, Grace, what do you hope to do after your degree?
Yeah, thank you. So this was like a very sort of like recent development. Like up until now, I was not sure at all, and it came as kind of like dipping my toe in a lot of different things. So, like applying for internships and not necessarily always, you know, getting them, volunteering, kind of asking around. So yeah, I'd love to sort of like work in theatre, and I think that kind of came from like me being involved with the University Drama Society. And kind of, for me, that's kind of where I've got to. So it's like kind of like an umbrella sort of industry for me to look a bit more into in terms of what specifically I want to do, because I know that there are jobs that I don't even know about yet. So but yeah, I think that would be nice, because I think it's the thing that I've just found that I just never get bored of, and I think that's really important to me in a future career. But yeah, it did take a long time to develop that, like literally end of second year. So yeah, a lot of people don't get there necessarily as quickly.
No, yeah, no, that's a really good point. And still, you've still got time to explore, yeah, and see what you might want to do. Amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
Cool. Helen, thank you so much for that session as well. That was really, really helpful. And I think hopefully has put some people's minds at ease, as well as they have got those anxieties or a bit of apprehension about going to university, that there is plenty of support available, and a variety of different support available as well. So no, thank you both. That was really, really helpful. I'm just going to share my screen a moment, unless Helen, there was anything else you wanted to add. Yep, cool. Where's me? So hopefully you can see that. But just to mention that this kind of concludes our live virtual sessions from us as part of this event. But the fun is not over yet. Tonight we have some tickets for you to take part in a virtual theatre night with Mischief Comedy. So keep an eye on your emails, because we're going to be sending you a link shortly to be able to access that from home. And this is a live performance happening in London that you're going to be beamed into and be able to see them doing on stage. So we hope you really enjoy taking part in that. We'd love to know what you think and what themes you choose, so please do feel free to pop any messages in our group chat. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you, but please keep an eye out for your emails. I think the stream opens at 7:30, but the performance starts at 8, so yeah, keep an eye out for that and enjoy. And just to quickly mention, for those of you who are joining us tomorrow, please arrive for 9:45. We'll be kicking off then with a bit of registration and just checking in, making sure everybody gets here on time. We've got a couple of more interactive taster sessions for you tomorrow, an illustration workshop and a nursing taster. We've got some different sessions about skills. We're going to hear from Grace again and her experience. So thank you, Grace, for giving up your Saturday to join us, as well as the pizza lunch. Who doesn't love a pizza lunch? And some action planning as well. So a full busy day tomorrow, but we're really looking forward to seeing you in person. We really enjoyed taking part in this activity. We just had a question: how many people will be there tomorrow? We're not quite sure, but we're probably aiming for about 10. Might be 10 people, so we'll be a small group, which just means more pizza, I think. But myself, Helen and Gabby will be there tomorrow as well in person. So you've seen us virtually and now you will see us in person as well. But if you have any other questions about tomorrow, please do pop them in the chat. And yeah,
I'll just add, sorry Jess.
Yeah, go.
I'll just add, because you've all attended the sessions today and some of you attended the sessions yesterday, you'll also get an email about your Just Eat voucher that you can easily sit and eat and order whatever you like while watching the stream, a theatre show later on. So watch out for that as well. We're sending that through shortly.
Yes, yeah, thanks, Gabby. Yeah, there's a massive reminder on the screen and I didn't even mention it.
When it comes to food, it's the first thing I'm worried. I'm on it, Jess. Seriously, come on.
Love it.
You know me already.
Brilliant. So yeah, no, thank you everybody. We've really enjoyed this and we're so glad that you've been able to take part. Yeah, if you have any final questions, please pop them in the chat. But if not, enjoy the theatre show tonight. Just got a couple more. Oh, don't want to raise my hand. Where's the chat? There we go. Oh, lovely. Just some thank yous. Well, thank you. That's lovely. Brilliant. Enjoy this evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
See you tomorrow.